Hi everyone and welcome to today's edition of Let's Talk Tokenization. And today we are going to talk about tokenizing movies or rather copyright licenses in movies. Could you guys give me a quick yes if I'm clearly audible and visible to all of you? Hi Paolo, I can see you there. Could you just give me a yes if I'm absolutely my audio and video is clear and then I'll start off. Hi Ritik. Hi Udaya, how are you doing? Just give me a quick yes if I'm clearly audible and visible to all of you. Awesome. So, when we talk about tokenization of movies, so a lot of you may think that are we actually talking about putting the entire movie on a blockchain? No, absolutely not. That's not what we obviously can do. But what we are talking about is putting the copyright licenses of a movie or fractionalizing or tokenizing them. Now, let's try to understand how does a movie actually make money, right? What is the revenue stream for a movie? So let's start with a very simple example. I'm sure you guys have heard about the Tintin comics, right? I used to love them as a kid. So now, if I look at this, it's ultimately you could call it a comic book or a comic or whatever. The person who wrote this gets something called a copyright license over it, which means that person is allowed to give out licenses for anyone to do different things with his creation or her creation. So, for example, out of the Tintin comics, if we take a character and we make this kind of a collectible out of it, you would need permission from the creator of that comic to do this. Similarly, you could create a book, or sorry, a movie out of the character. So for Tintin, there have been several movies that have been made. But while doing that, you had to take permission, get a copyright license from the creator, and then only could you make a movie. So similarly, there are so many situations where it starts with a movie, and then maybe a book comes out of it, characters, collectibles come out of it. Look at something like Harry Potter. It started with a book, then came the movies. The book itself got translated into so many different languages. Collectibles were created. All of this is covered by the scope of copyright licenses. I hope that's all clear. This is just, I wanted to give you guys some basic overview of what copyright is all about. If questions, just put them in the comments and I'll take them. Now about movies, one of the first kind of license that comes in is what we call as an adaptation right. That means you are taking that movie or some of the characters of the movie and converting it into a book. Or you want to use some part of the movie to advertise some other product. Or you want to create an audio book out of it. You want to create collectibles out of it. Or let's say you want to give distribution rights. So the movie can be shown in theaters, the movie can be shown on OTT platforms like Netflix or Amazon Prime. Each of those activities requires a license. And because copyrights last for over 50 years, they generate money over a long period of time. Like there was a very popular television show called as Friends, somewhere in the 90s. Even today, it's very popular. Decades after the show got over, the producers of the show or the copyright owners continue to make huge amounts of money from it. So, what we are talking about when we talk about tokenizing movies or any other intellectual property, we are talking about taking these individual copyright licenses, and there are more than 30 types of these, and making them available on a blockchain, fractionalizing them. So people like you and me could buy fractions of these licenses. And then, as the movie continues to make money over the next 50 plus years, it's like if you're from India, you would have heard about a movie called Sholay, which is kind of almost as old as I am. So it's been making money for about 50 years now. So if we were to have a portion of the copyright license of Sholay, we would have also made money over 50 years. So that's primarily what we talk about when we talk about tokenization of movies. We talk about tokenizing the copyright license in the movie. Are there any questions that you guys have? I know it's a slightly different topic, so many of you may not have too many questions as of right now, but it'll be great. It'll give us more interaction. And nowadays we have so many new kinds of things. Like you have amusement parks coming out. So maybe out of some of the movies, you could create theme park or amusement park kind of rides based on characters which were in a movie. Again, that would require you to have some kind of a license, and only then would you be able to do it. Now, these copyright licenses don't by default go to anybody. There are agreements in place. So when somebody decides to make a movie, they hire musicians, dialogue writers, script writers, actors, singers. All of these people sign certain kinds of agreements with the person making the movie, and that decides what license they hold in their own performance. And then based on that, even they could make money over a long time. So some of the very popular film stars like a Tom Cruise, they also get a share in the revenue generated by the movies they come in. And so as the movie makes money over decades, even they get paid more and more. So in fact, even the television show Friends, the licensing was done in such a way that the six original stars who acted in it even today continue to get a huge amount of money from the revenue of the serial. So Afroz wants to know, is this available today for purchase? So to the best of my knowledge, Afroz, no, it is not. I know there are certain people working on such platforms, but as of right now, I'm not aware of any such project which has gone live. But I'm hoping it would soon go. In fact, there may be some people on the call here today. Yeah, so as Ritik says, let me just quickly share his comment. So at filmfinance.app, we have segregated the IP rights and the revenue rights. And in the tokenization, we are only giving the revenue rights, and the intellectual property stays with the filmmaker or the production team. Sure, that's an interesting approach to take, Ritik. So I'd just like to add something here. So usually when we talk about intellectual property, we talk about two kinds of rights. One is a moral right. That means if I have created something, I have the moral right to always be known as the creator or the author, and that nobody can take away from me. What I license away are called the economic rights. So the different revenue streams or the different kinds of money that it could generate, that I can license away. My moral right stays with me. Abhijit says mix it with a DAO for shareholders for events. Yeah, sure, that makes a lot of sense for event decisions. So yeah, ideally, I mean, what you could have in the future is, so today when we look at films, because a huge amount of money goes in, you usually have production houses which do it. But tomorrow you could have DAOs where individuals around the world could get together, form a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, and then different people would contribute money, and that DAO could then create the movie and generate revenue, and all the DAO members could get paid over a prolonged period of time. Definitely, maybe that's something we'll see happening. Afroz wants to know, what are the industries where this concept is applied? Yeah, sure, that's a good question. So I would say one is the books. So books, again, intellectual property, copyrights are there in that, just like in movies. So you have books, you have movies, you have music, you have software. All of these come under the same kind of copyright protection. So the licenses to all of these could also be very easily tokenized on the blockchain. Sardar wants to know, how can someone like me be a part of the movie who will get a fraction of that money? Should we need to write a smart contract for that? That's a good question. So now this would depend upon whoever is starting. So whoever creates the movie, right? So it could be the director, for example, the single most important person who puts the whole movie together. Now the director has to decide how he wants to tokenize. Now there are two approaches that can be taken. One approach is, before the movie is made, you tokenize the ownership, and the people investing become part owners of the movie. But there is a risk in this, that what if the movie doesn't get completed? A lot of movies don't actually get completed for some reason or the other. In that case, you end up losing all your money. The second option is, after the movie is ready, the copyright has been granted by the government. So you apply to the government regulator in whichever country, and they grant you a copyright. Then you start issuing licenses. So the second option is, after the copyright is granted, then the licenses are actually fractionalized. And I would say I prefer that kind of an approach, because then as an investor, you're not worried that what if the movie doesn't get prepared? I lose all my money. Now you know the movie is ready, the copyright has been granted, now the licenses can be bought, and then we can make money over it. So both these options are available. It would depend upon the director what they want to really do with it. Let's take another one. This is from Kasha. Is there any companies to help set up a DAO? That's a good question. So there are platforms like Aragon which you can use to set up your own DAO. So setting up a DAO is not a very complex process. So if you use Aragon or any such platform, it's just a matter of few clicks. Or you can do something, or you can use something called Open Zeppelin. That's a wizard creator for smart contracts, and you could actually create a governance token using something like that. Of course, I would always recommend, if you're not a tech person, then don't try it on your own. Hire someone for it and get the smart contract audited. And I'll explain the reason why. The world's first DAO was created on the Ethereum platform several years ago. Now, unfortunately, at that time, since DAOs were very new, this was the first, there was a kind of a glitch programming, because of which about $60 million worth of ETH was siphoned out by a hacker, because he found a glitch in the code and hacked it. So after this happened, there was a lot of buzz in the community that what should be done. So at that time there were two kinds of approaches. So some people said, let's roll back the Ethereum blockchain transactions and return money to people. And some people said, no, we can't do that. Blockchains are supposed to be immutable. So how can we roll it back? So at that time, the people who did not want it to be rolled back and the people who wanted to be rolled back didn't agree with each other. So the entire Ethereum blockchain actually split into two. We call that as the hard fork. And the original platform is called as Ethereum Classic, ETC. And the one that rolled back is today known as Ethereum, or ETH. So it's very, very critical that if you're creating a DAO or a smart contract, make sure security audit is properly done. Hope that answers your question. Let's take another one. Abhijit says, such a market for books will continue on declining side, just my opinion. So while you may be right that books are declining in terms of printed books, but then we could always continue to have ebooks. Amazon has Kindle, and huge number of books are still sold even today. So I don't think fundamentally books are going to go away. Yes, from paper based we may move on to digital, but books remains a massive industry. Udaya wants to know, so the owners of the tokens will be the production company. So yes, on day one, when the token is first created, it would be the production company, and then people like you and me who are investing, or people who are acting in the movie, musicians, everyone could then be paid in those same tokens. So for example, let's say we want to collaborate and make a movie, we want to democratize the ownership. Then all the actors, actresses, directors, producers, musicians, everyone could actually be given tokens. So instead of being given cash upfront, everyone could have a share in the success and failure of the movie. So that's also possible. Yogesh says OTT also produces movies. Can the tokenization be app? Yes. So the tokenization applies to any intellectual property, whether that's books, movies, music, software. It applies to all of them, and it is the copyright owner who can then distribute these tokens. Ritik says, how many companies are you aware that are working towards film tokenization? Yeah, Ritik, that's a good question. I know you are one of those who's doing it. Other than that, on and off, I do keep hearing online about some startups that are looking into this direction, but I'm not sure whether any of them have actually gone live with their platforms. So, no, I don't know anybody else. Are there any other questions so far on this? So now similarly, like we're talking about music and books, we could talk about software. Now in software, of course, things get a little complicated. If we take the example of something like a SaaS software, right, which is software as a service, that I think is a very easy thing to tokenize, because what would happen is, how does a SaaS platform make money? They build a software. Ideally, people can then connect to it through a web browser or a mobile app, and then people pay as you go. So you pay a monthly subscription or a per use kind of a subscription. So the beauty of this is it's very easy to see the revenue stream. Like when we look at a movie, it's still very difficult for us to know how much money the movie is actually making. But when it comes to software, especially a SaaS platform, it's very easy for us to see all of this, all the revenues that are coming. So ideally, we could keep one address. So let's say we decide that this SaaS platform will take all the money or all the subscriptions in USDT. So there could be one particular address dedicated to all the revenues. So anybody in the world then can see what kind of revenues are coming, and then we could have a smart contract which automatically distributes a share on a monthly basis to all the token holders. So I think tokenizing software is probably even easier than tokenizing a movie. Manohar has a long question. Let me first read that out. So Manohar says, how about tokenizing a part of a sports franchise, which will be similar to movie tokenizing? Interestingly, these tokens may well be used for different transactions within the ecosystem, such as merchandise. Further, how about tokens to decide which players the franchisee should be buying in their next round? More or less like a partial DAO. I think that's a very good concept. And let me give you an example of something similar which is already happening. So there is a platform called Chiliz, CHILLIZ, I think, and their core token is called CHZ. So what you can do on that platform is you buy CHZ from an exchange, then move it into their mobile wallet or their app, and then you can buy fan tokens of different sports teams, whether that's a football team, cricket team. They have lots and lots of teams there. And then depending upon the tokens you have, you can vote for certain decisions regarding that team. So ways what you're suggesting is there, and I'm sure step would be where a bunch of people could come together and actually, instead of a single rich person owning an entire team, it could be a group of fans who could come together and buy out a particular team. And then, of course, the merchandising and other rights also could happen. So I would strongly recommend do have a look at the Chili's project. So you'll find it quite interesting. Let me see, take another question. Udaya says that I guess to tokenize these movies, we need to take care about the local laws and legal team need to play an important role. So I would say that about every single tokenization project, we always need to consider the legal aspect because ultimately what you're tokenizing is a copyright license, which is a pure legal document. So naturally, the lawyers need to make sure everything is properly taken care of. So I'm aware of several movies where even the movies are doing pretty well, the copyright licenses are in quite a mess. I mean, it's kind of very difficult to come to know how many people have already been given those licenses. So it's pretty surprising, but it does happen that many times the producers did not take this issue very seriously. And today, when they come to tokenize, they realize they don't even know how many people they've already given such licenses. And then there are some licenses which are given on for a limited period. So suppose you give someone a license to show it on an OTT platform for X number of months. You have to make sure all those licenses are stored properly, ideally in a digital form, so everybody can have a look at it and you know what kind of rights are actually available. So, yes, legal obviously remains a very critical aspect of this. Any other questions? So, if you have questions, I mean, I'll still be there for a few minutes. If you have questions around other kinds of tokenization, sure. I'd also like to add here that the personal project that I'm working on is tokenization of Scotch whiskey casks, and we've reached quite an advanced level. And our first cask is almost purchased, so we'll be tokenizing that very soon. So, if I'm ready with all the information, then probably in next week's session, I'll specifically talk about how we are tokenizing whiskey and how you can be a part of it, or it may take another week for me to do that, but I'll be doing that very soon. I'm quite excited to share all that information with you guys. Are there any other kind of questions you guys have? Okay. One last point I wanted to add, that when we talk about tokenization, one common question that I always get asked is why don't we create a company around it? Like, instead of using blockchain tokens, we simply create a company and the company shares are traded. Now, there are two things for us to remember, that whenever we talk about a company, first comes the compliance cost. So if we try to convert every book, ownership of the book for a company, it's not going to be very feasible because there are like millions of books. We can't really handle compliance costs for a million companies. Same is the case with, say, software or movies or any of these kind of things. The second thing is that the moment we convert it into a company and we start playing around with the shares, you come under the securities laws. So there you have to then make sure that whichever country you are doing this from, the securities regulator of that country, like the SEC in the US or the SEBI in India, they need to be, then all their norms and rules need to be followed. So if you're aware, very recently, the Securities and Exchange Commission of the US filed cases against Binance and Coinbase, saying that a lot of the cryptos that they've listed are actually securities which did not follow the proper securities laws. So I would strongly recommend that in most cases, try to stay away from converting that particular asset into a company. Try to tokenize it without making it a company. That's a much better solution from a legal point of view. But of course, there are laws relating to tokens in so many of the countries, and we need to kind of follow them. So if there are no other questions, I'll end the session for today. And like I said, I do see another question. So Udaya wants to know what would be the market in these tokenization, because blockchain is a new concept and we need to attract our customers, and we need to increase the trust in our customers to tokenize. So that's a good point. So what we've got to remember, see, firstly, you need to explain to potential investors and customers that blockchain and cryptocurrency are two different concepts. Blockchain is the name of the technology, cryptocurrency is one of the use cases. And a simple way of explaining it to them is the conventional world, like everybody uses, say, a WhatsApp. WhatsApp runs on a database, or even YouTube, where probably most of you are watching this right now, it runs on a database. So, database is the technology, and YouTube is a use case, or WhatsApp is a use case. Similarly, blockchain is the tech. Cryptocurrency like Bitcoin is one use case, and tokenization of assets is another use case. So they need to then next be explained that why are we talking about blockchain in this. So the reason that we talk about blockchain and tokenization is any investor can take a node at near zero cost and have complete data with them. So they are 100% sure that their assets are under their control. Now, that kind of a scenario you do not get anywhere else in the world. Like a WhatsApp can never give you access to their database and you can say, oh, I can see my data in that. No, WhatsApp is never going to give you their database. But when it comes to blockchain, things are different. Anybody can set up a node. So that should give customers the confidence that if they tokenize their assets or they invest in assets on the blockchain, they are going to have 24 by 7 control over their assets and complete transparency, because they would be able to run their own nodes. So that's something that you guys should keep in mind. Ritik suggests to Manor that they should buy KKR, which is, I guess, an IPL team in India. Sure, that's a good idea. Maybe you guys should bid for it. I don't know too much about cricket, so I don't know if KKR is a good team or a bad team. But yeah, sure, that's a good idea. And I'm sure the world is moving into that direction. A lot of people today are talking about alternative investments, and they are ready to kind of try out new things. So I'm eagerly awaiting when some of the first sports teams would also get tokenized, and people like you and me would be able to very easily buy and sell tokens of these teams. Are there any other questions? Okay, I do not see any other questions. So great. I hope you guys like this session, and I'll see you guys same time next week. Bye bye.